Hello, this is Craig Mertens, Director of Product Education for Printavo, the parent company of Printavo, InkSoft, GraphicsFlow, and now SignTracker. Welcome to our webinar today on AI. I have with me Matt Marcotte, who is the Implementation Manager, tough word to say, for Printavo. So Matt, if you don't mind, quick little bio, tell folks what your daily work life looks like, and then we'll get right into it.
Yeah, thanks so much, Craig. Appreciate you having me on the webinar today. So as Craig said, I'm Matt Marcotte, Implementation Manager here at Printavo with the InkTavo company. So daily, what I get to do is I get to have the most fun, I think. I kind of got the lucky job in the company. I'm a little biased though, right? My role is shops that are onboarding and start to use Printavo, they can self-implement. There is a lot of very helpful tutorials, videos, and help guides. However, I'm the kind of person that I'd rather just have somebody help me do it a little bit faster. Not everyone works that way. Some people like to kind of go their own route, which is also fine. For those who do want to have a little bit of assistance to really streamline and maximize their efficiencies with the Printavo platform, that's what my job is. So most days I'm spending usually 6 to 7 hours a day on Zoom calls. That does seem tedious for a lot of people. For me, I get to do this all day. I get to talk shop and problem solve with shops all day long to make their Printavo experience the best that it can be, to give them back more time, more money, just be what they want to be for their company, not feel so reactive all the time. So my days are usually wrapped around Zoom and working with shops. Otherwise, once a month, I'm actually flying somewhere in this great country to a shop and doing that in person as well. So I'm really lucky to be able to work with lots of shops remotely and in person to figure out how to problem solve all the problems that come in their print shop day in and day out.
You know, I thought I had the coolest job in the company, but it sounds to me like your job's actually cooler. So it sounds like a lot of fun. I get to train all of our sales team members, our customers, and our partners as part of what I do. And, you know, I think, Matt, you and I both share this enthusiasm for teaching, which is why we're here today. So we're going to get right into it. AI, wow, a year ago. I think we'd all heard of AI probably primarily through Hollywood movies, a little bit of bad rap with the Terminator series and all the other AI-oriented horror films that have come out over the years. But AI really became a major part of our lives a little over 18 months ago. And now it's kind of invasive in a sense. It's everywhere. You know, look at every software platform has some kind of angle for AI. So, you know, what I first want to kind of, talk about today is, your kind of perspective on AI technology and what does it mean for the decorated apparel industry?
Yeah, great question. And you're so right. It's gotten a bad rap. I mean, I think to like Space Odyssey, like movies from a long time ago that have like these horrifying like AI endings. And to be fair, we don't know what's going to happen fully. But one thing we do know is it's here. It's going to keep coming and more aggressively into our lives, right? So like you said, 18 months ago, it was more of like a fad word of like, oh, AI. Now it's a part of our daily lives. It's only going to compound more. The singularity, right? The more that technology improves technology, the more it compounds, right? So it's going to keep becoming more and more present all around us. So I think for the decorated apparel industry, just like all industries, I think there's a bit of, well, it's not going to affect us yet, so I'm not going to worry about it. I don't know if that's the right move, to be honest. Now, although I do think right now it's safe to say it's not going to replace your salesperson. I don't think it's anywhere near enough to replace your actual press operator. Although I've seen some videos of robots folding shirts. They don't look very good. Their shirt folds quite yet, but they're getting there, right? I think that what we're starting to see now is the entrance of using it as a time saver. And so I think shops, all of us, what kills us in our day are those micro things we have to do. If it's just, I have to answer these emails and I have to go print shirts, that's easy. It's all the little like side emails, side questions, side this, side that, those little micro tasks that end up eating away our day. And I think that now more than ever is a time to start to look at, is there a solution in this new broad AI field that might help me with kind of mitigating some of those micro tasks or empowering other people to get the answers they need to avoid slowing them down and then slowing you down to get those solutions and those answers. So I think it's going to, you got to kind of reach to find how it's going to fit into any real in our industry or other industries, right? But I think it's going to start becoming more and more present. And the people that start to use it now, they're going to be far advanced when it starts to be a bigger thing, as opposed to people who wait until it's already too late to start to adopt and adapt to the new AI landscape.
It's interesting. You mentioned yesterday that you feel like AI has made you 1.3x. And I thought that was a great analogy. It doesn't reduce the volume of work that I'm doing. It hasn't made my job easier from that point of view, but it's allowed me to scale and just do a lot more. And the capacity that I have now utilizing my kind of suite of everyday AI tools, and it's literally my AI tools are open on my screen all day long, it's pretty remarkable. I want to talk kind of about some of the tools that are available in the industry, but I think most people are familiar with ChatGPT. I'll kind of kick that over to you. I use ChatGPT, the free version. I know you use the paid version, and we'll talk a little bit about the differences between the two. I use a tool called Claude, which is another generative AI model, but does a better job of writing. So I can get the information that I need out of ChatGPT, and then I can give Claude a sample of my speaking, and I can say, hey, Claude, can you make this more formal? And it makes it more formal. Or can you make it more casual? And it starts saying dude and bro. And then I'm like, hey, can you meet me in the middle here somewhere? And then for search, just getting quick information, I use a tool called Perplexity. And I think most people are tuned into what Microsoft is doing with Copilot. And basically, they just private labeled ChatGPT and Dolly into their platforms. So what's your daily drivers in terms of AI, and where do you see the application environment going?
Yeah, no, great question. And to your 1.3x, that is exactly how I look at it. And I'll get into like what tools I like, but I oftentimes think about like what it was like let's take a salesman's world, right? A salesperson in the 1970s, 1980s, 1990s, 2000s, right? The evolution of the computer. You used to have a phone book and a rotary phone, or if you were a road salesperson, you had to stop at phone booths and actually call people. That job was so much harder. So what would take a week with the evolution of the computer took a day, right? You take an automatic press versus a manual press, and what can you get done, right? So this is a natural evolution of how everything goes. It's always going to get faster and better. So exactly right. I can take my day, and instead of just doing 100% of what I normally could do, I can now do 130% of what I could do in that same time span. Talking with a buddy of mine, Ryan Kasperian, I was telling him, it was kind of funny, we're back and forth with the different things we're both using AI for. And the joke was that I went from being exceptionally mediocre at a lot of things to annoyingly good at a bunch of things, right?
Right.
And it's kind of fun because I'm not a developer, but now I can code better, right? I'm not a designer, I can design better, right? Because I'm able to utilize these tools. So the tool landscape, it's growing so rapidly. You mentioned some of the staples that I think, I'm glad you brought those up. Those are core staples you should definitely be looking at. I mean, there's ChatGPT, Dolly, Perplexity, Jasper, Copilot, Claude, Bard, which is now rebranded as Gemini. So there's so many of these, and we're going to start to see more applications for that, right? You mentioned Microsoft kind of just white labeling ChatGPT. Well, Apple announced they're partnering up with ChatGPT as well to incorporate that into make Siri a little bit smarter, be Siri or it'll hand over, right? So as these language learning models are getting smarter and smarter, we're going to see more easier adaptation into them with APIs. So I think that it's just a matter of the next couple of months until we start seeing a lot more built-in AI aids of some sorts. Like you mentioned with Copilot, they're already looking at how to have help in Excel. Can you imagine being in Excel and having like an AI? It's like, hey, instead of having to know this weird code to make this table, hit this button, boop, right? So it really helps you get to the next level. My go-to day in and day out is ChatGPT. I am on the paid premium account. It's like $20 a month, I believe. And I've been on ChatGPT since like day one. So a lot of the same things that you mentioned that you're using, I've got channels that I've trained up with every article I've ever written, right? So it kind of has the voice of Matt Marcotte down, which I know it's terrifying, somebody else having my voice too. But it's able to kind of write for me, do things for me. I think the lowest hanging fruit that I always suggest, I think I mentioned this to you too. There was an old skit on Key and Peele, Anger Interpreter, right? Where someone said something nice and they interpret and say the mean thing they're actually meaning. I use it the opposite way. We all get those frustrating emails and you're just like, I just want to like write what I'm really thinking. That's usually not a good idea, right? So I will go to ChatGPT and I'll kind of like just quickly just brain dump what I want and then tell it, like you mentioned, how do I want it to respond? And that way, instead of spending 15 minutes like rereading my email, proofing it, try to decide if it's the right tone, I'm just quickly moving on to the next task. Again, that 1.3x. But would have taken me 10 minutes to like de-escalate my emotions in that email to then drive the point I want to get across. I can now have that done in a couple of seconds, really a couple of minutes tops, right? With the help of AI. So that's probably one of my go-tos. One of the other things I love to do, again, with the paid subscription to ChatGPT, is I just drop in data and I ask it questions. I don't have to do so much of, okay, let me download a giant spreadsheet. Let me go over into Google Sheets. Let me go ahead and make some V lookups. Let me go do this, let me go do that, and have to spend a bunch of time just to get some data sets. I literally just drop the data set into ChatGPT and then ask it for what I want. It reads the data set and gives me the answers. I run reports monthly that way. Where before I used to have to say, okay, let me spend the afternoon running reports. I'm done in about 10, 15 minutes now, right? So it's a matter of using it to streamline all those little micro events that eat away your day.
You know, it's crazy. I just did this the other day. I had to do a report card set up I train all of our salespeople, and one of the things that we do is demos. And so I did a model demo. I took the transcript, and then I had ChatGPT create I said, I need 20 grading points based on this demo that I need to grade by. I created that. I said, hey, create a table. Here's the ranking system that I want based on, fail, pass, exceeds, all that. Create a table, dropped it into Google Sheets, had Google Sheets auto-format it. And the whole thing took me 5 minutes. It was silly, the amount of time savings. And normally a project like that, I would have just been yuck. That just sounds like the most boring, just kind of just challenge, hard. That's a hard thing to do. And we just made it just a few mouse clicks, and it did a really good job. I had to do a little bit of manual tweaking. I think you find that with all AIs. A little bit of manual tweaking goes a long way. So I want to kind of dive into production a little bit. So how is AI helping to automate the production workflow from design to delivery, and what are the key benefits and challenges you've observed? And I specifically want you to touch a little bit on, and I think everybody knows what Zapier does, and Printavo's Zapier enabled, but some of the other automation tools, and I know you have a tool that you prefer as well. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I like to kind of think of AI and kind of lump it in with just modern lean practices, right? So AI is obviously a buzzword. It's a tool. Automations overall is really what I look at. And automations might include having an AI to talk to and get information. Any of these things are all about streamlining what you're doing to get more output with the same amount of time, right? Or even less. So APIs and automations are massive, massive time savers that are a big part of what the new landscape's going to be. So when we talk about how we're going to start seeing more and more of these AI, let's call them chatbots or integrated help within platforms, that's being done via an API, which essentially is kind of like backdoors to softwares where things can kind of transfer back and forth data sets with what is allowed based off of the company or the software that's a part of. So going to that 1.3x again, it's not just with AI. It's all about what am I doing throughout the day and how can I mitigate some of that time, right? So a really, really good example that a lot of shops deal with. And for the record, if you don't know, folks, I do also own a print shop. It's called Sound and Fury. Of course, we're a Printavo shop, an InkTavo shop across the board, right? So one thing that we find at our shop is it's hard to follow up with customers about quotes, right? I mean, there's a lot. If you have the capacity to hire more people to do that, you should do that. We are not at that level. We're a small but mighty, one auto, one manual shop, right? With very little labor force. So we need to automate things, but we don't want to get rid of that human element, what feels like a personal touch, right? So one thing that we've leveraged using Printavo's really robust API is what we call a chase sequence, right? So a chase sequence means that I can send a quote to a customer. And what I have set up is that in 2 business days, if they haven't approved that or declined it, which means I'm still waiting on an answer, well, I'm a little busy with my day job that I love, My business partner is busy on press, right? So we might forget to get to that. Now, what happens, we use something called automations.io, which is similar to Zapier. We'll kind of talk about what that means here in a minute. But with automations.io, it actually says, oh, it's been 2 business days. It triggers a status change in my Printavo to a follow-up status, re-emails and re-texts the customers, and it changes the production due date and the customer date by 2 business days on my calendar, which means I can still do my job, he can still do his job, and we're still notifying the customer with their first name, referencing the job, and telling them, hey, we haven't heard from you, we're moving this on our schedule, please approve, right? So we're able to chase them with a couple of chase points before it sends a text message saying, hey, call this customer, it's been booted 2 times. So now we're reminded to call the customer and get the dialogue going to get them to close that order, which means we're leaving less on the plate. We're doing a lot less of that quote and hope, because really sales is not flicking a coin into a wishing well and hoping it happens, right? We have to actually nurture that sale. But without the time to do so, this is a nice way to kind of, again, 1.3x yourself. So we talk about Zapier, we talk about automations.io. What does that mean? Zapier is awesome. I have a lot of stuff on Zapier, right? Zapier, Printavo took the time to actually build connections with the API to Zapier. So you can do a whole lot of things, right? Another example I have through Zapier, when an order gets complete in my Printavo, it waits 3 business days, and then it checks a spreadsheet to see if we've emailed them, the customer, about a Google review yet. If their email's not there, it actually emails the customer asking for a Google review, which is, again, something that I need to do, but I oftentimes forget to do. And asking for Google reviews is how your SEO goes up when you get Google reviews to help you get more work. It's one of those things where if you don't take the time to do it, you're kind of hurting yourself. But if you don't have the time to do it, how do you make the time? This is how you make the time. So figuring out what do you need to do in your day that you have to do repetitively, following up on quotes, asking for reviews. You find those things, you identify them, and then you figure out, how can I automate it, right? Think the Shark Tank thing. There's got to be a better way. There might be a better way, right? So I'm actually going to share my screen real quick. I'm going to show you. So I'm sharing my screen right here. And what we can see is we're looking at automations.io. So this is something that what I like about this company is they actually do the work for you. You don't have to build this. In Zapier, you have to build it yourself or hire someone to build it for you. Automations.io, they build it for me. So here I can see quote is sent out for approval. It waits 2 days and then looks the order up, and then it tries to see if it's still in that status. So I have it called, here I'll zoom in a little bit. I have it called quote out for approval. If it's still in that status, that means it is in that status. It needs to update the due dates and change the status. If it's not in that status, or it's not in the status anymore, it means they've approved it or declined it. It's going to kill the automation. They click approve, they click decline, one of those 2 things, right? So it just keeps chasing it and reminding the customer over and over again until it ends up archived. Meaning we've tried to call them, we've emailed them 3 or 4 times now, they haven't moved forward. We're going to archive that and move on to the next one, right? But before, this was a very manual lift where we had to do a whole lot of following up manually with the customer. In this instance, that's now done automatically. So that's just one way in which being able to automate some of those processes and not have to take as long with those micro tasks that a person has to do means, again, you're finding a way to 1.3x yourself.
In what ways do you see AI reducing errors during the production process, and what impact does this have on overall output quality?
First off, when thinking of production and AI, there's already some things that I've seen even demoed at some of the trade shows, right? Where you've got cameras that are actually over the polling station, and basically you load the first screen print, and when the first approved one comes over on that poll pallet, you basically train the eye that that's correct. And so it kind of scans it and says, yep, this is what it should look like. And every time a new image comes underneath that, it compares, right? And if we're screen printing correctly, proper tack, all that stuff, it doesn't move. It should be in the same exact location every time, right? So it's able to then say, yep, pass, up, pause, variant, right? And a variant could be, there's a pinhole, there's a streak, there's a line, you're missing ink, something that could actually help you go, whoa, and then go reprint that screen and then get it off the press. Which that's going to be a big QC helper when you can take somebody who maybe isn't as trained on QCs to be a puller, and you have technology helping make sure you're actually getting the quality that your shop demands. So that's kind of a fun still to come, but I've already seen it demoed at some of the trade shows. However, when we look at how can it help with scheduling things, there's already a bunch of different AI personal calendars that you can test out, where it's things like, hey, I have this task. I think it's going to take me about an hour and a half. I give it a 7 out of 10 on complexity. And I think I would do better trying to do this in the evenings, right? And it'll actually take all your other schedules and it'll kind of like rearrange your personal schedule to try to optimize how you work best. Some people love those. Some people are like, I kind of doesn't understand the nuance of the day, so I'm not quite sure if I want to use it yet. But I think that same principle can really become a powerful tool in production management, right? We can start to have machine learning to understand our press operators, right? Because I hear like, hey, how many shirts should my press print an hour? It's like, well, that's too many variables there. Sure, if I'm selling you a press, I'll tell you, oh, it can do 700 per hour. But that depends on a lot of other variables, right? Where machine learning could be able to understand who the press operators are and the presses themselves and the capacity and capabilities of the press operators and the presses, right? So the ability to kind of throw work into a scheduler and have machine learning read the work, read the types, the colors, the screens, the locations, the due dates, and be able to optimize to give it to the appropriate press and the appropriate press operators at the appropriate time. That's going to be game changing, Craig. That's going to be awesome. Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah. Using AI tools for scheduling is something that we're taking a very serious look at right now. And I can imagine the day when a rush order comes in and you can just, hey, fit this in. Then you don't have your production manager melting down.
And hopefully it also automates asking for the rush fee to the customer, right?
So one of the things that I want to chat a little bit about is, the human component. It was, where there's a lot of discussions about where AI is going to be replacing people, and the kind of jobs that are secure, and the kind of jobs that aren't secure. I don't really want to get into all that because there's, that's maybe it's a little bit early, but we're already starting to see these AI virtual assistants. And I got to experience that firsthand. I'm a pretty prolific AliExpress orderer because I figured out I get the same stuff that I get on Amazon for if I'm willing to wait a week for a quarter of the price. And I ordered a keyboard, mechanical keyboard for them, and the whole thing was a disaster, and they couldn't ship it. So I was trying to get a refund, and I got into the virtual assistant, can't talk to a live human, and it was chaos. And so since I determined it was going to be chaos, I decided to just kind of press the limits of what their bot virtual assistant could do. It was pretty interesting to see that. So I'm not advocating that we replace human beings with robots for customer service, but we are starting to see some of the lower level things that you can do within your org using some things like chatbots. And we had talked a little bit about chatbot, chatbase.io, are one of our InkSoft demo stores. Never done it before. And Ryan Schultz and myself, he did all the hard work. I just embedded it in the site, super easy. Put a chatbot in there. We trained it on a fictional business. We put in our turnaround times. We put in our company hours. We put in our quoting policy, our capabilities in terms of types of imprints. And it learns. We monitor the questions. And when we see the questions, we go and update the answers, and it knows the answer to that the next time. So I definitely see that starting to make an impact. And I was shockingly surprised at how good a job it would do for free. There's paid plans that can do a lot more and it's more scalable, but how do you see like this balance? Because it seems to me like that play on that is really more with API and kind of finding that balance between getting orders over to, like order entry, right? There's certain things that you just have to, a human being has to look at it before it, hey, is this right? So you're always going to have that element, but getting the data pushed over to somebody. I know GraphicsSource has been doing some things with API and automations. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's funny. I did the same thing last week. I had a really bad experience with a certain airline coming back from vacation, and they actually were straight up said, like, you don't get to talk to a human person anymore. You got to scan this QR code, and you got to go online. And I was like, well, that sucks already. And so I scanned the QR code, and they gave me to a chatbot. And it was atrocious. And so I started having fun with it, trying to break it and try to see like how far I could go. Same thing, right?
Yeah.
I do think that is going to get better. I think that a lot of times what's happening right now is people are seeing some low-hanging fruit, and they might be kind of like saying, yep, I'll take that. And they don't necessarily know, like you said, you guys went through the hard effort of training it. A lot of people think it's just an RFE, ready for use, out of the box. They can run with it. And there are some higher level companies that are actually making some really impressive out of the box stuff, but it's not really out of the box. They're training it for you and selling it to you at a higher margin, which is sometimes worth it, right? But I do see this being very, very prevalent. Right now, I've got a platform called ScreenPrint GPT, right? So ScreenPrint GPT, I'm using a couple different things now. ScreenPrint GPT, this is something you can access either at screenprintgpt.com, or I do have one that's also available in ChatGPT. But since we're talking about custom built, this is an example of one, right? So there's an AI chat that anybody can access. This is free to use, brought to you by a lot of great sponsors, including Rock, right? And this is something that I spent probably at this point, honestly, Craig, I'd say at least 100 hours training on thousands and thousands of different articles, conversations, guides, documents that I've acquired over almost 20 years of being a professional screen printer and production manager, right? And so this is an example of a well-trained AI that you can ask it anything about decorating, screen printing. It's really with embroidery, DTF, DTG, and you can ask it technical questions, right? So for shops that are dealing with on-press issues, you can ask what's going on. Is your screen breaking down? Ask it why it's breaking down. Give it the variables. We're using water-based ink on this screen. This is what's happening. And it'll actually give you very good and strong responses, right? So the more you put into it, the more you get out of it. Garbage in, garbage out, right? So this is an example of spending a lot of time to continue to train it. And like you mentioned, Craig, I'm able to be notified if it has a hard time answering something, and then I can help kind of coach it along. There's even the ability for a human handoff. I think we're going to see a lot more of that. As AI bots get smarter, I think we're going to see a lot more of them embedded onto websites, and the ability for a human handoff, where if it has a couple like strike one, strike two, strike three, here's a human. That way we still are able to close customers, get what we need kind of taken care of. But also, like you said, the API integration into these things, that's going to unlock a whole new world. That's what's considered agents, right? So they're already trying to figure out how to create these agents. And that's going to be a big thing, right? So for example, OpenAI and ChatGPT, they're trying to have agents as a reality within the next 12 months, right? And that agent would be not just AI that you can talk to and get answers, or have an email made nicer, or an image created and that kind of stuff. An agent would actually be telling it to do something, and it can go and act as an independent agent, right? So let's go into a fictional futuristic world where maybe there's a connection with Printavo, right? Where you could have a chat bot that's also an agent on your website. So a customer can ask some questions, tell what its needs are, and then the chat bot could then, via the API, go to your Printavo instance, generate the quote, input the data, and send it to the customer for you, right? So APIs and AIs together are how they're going to create what's called an agent. That's going to be a whole new world once we get to that spot, which I think is sooner than later. So while we're looking at ScreenPrintGPT real quick right here, this is available, screenprintgpt.com. It's free. Anybody's welcome to create an account. It will ask you for some data about your shop. Full disclosure, that data is shared with all these amazing sponsors. They're the ones paying for this platform, so it's not free. This is a very expensive platform to keep operational, and they're the ones paying the bill for everyone to have some of the best responses you can get without having to worry about going to Facebook and getting made fun of for asking a question, right? You can also access it now under ChatGPT. As of a couple months ago, this is actually free for even the free subscription of ChatGPT. Before, you had to be in the paid one to use it. But yeah, it's when agents come, it's going to be an exciting new world, Greg.
Yeah, I mean, a visionary, Matt. I'm just so impressed with the work that you put into this, and it's what an incredibly useful tool. We were kind of talking about customer communication and how we can streamline that, but let's talk a little bit about managing content, because one of the things that I persistently hear for customers from customers is, I don't have time to manage my social media. I don't have time to, write Instagram posts. Customer communication and marketing tools like, bulk emails, MailChimp, that kind of constant contact, that kind of thing. We're all busy running businesses, and, in a small shop environment, the main thing is we're trying to make sure we have enough money to get paid, right? So being able to have that extra time to scale our social media, I kind of get on people's case about that. And the reason I try to do it in a very diplomatic way, but I said, hey, how are people going to find you? You have a Google business listing. That's how people are going to find you in your area. They type in screen printing and Poughkeepsie, and if you don't show up, they're not going to find you. So AI is amazing. And in that particular example, you could go into ChatGPT and have it write you an entire recipe to optimize your visibility on Google Business. It'll write you the whole thing. It will tell you exactly what to do, what kind of photos it's looking for, all of that stuff. So all those excuses are taken away. And in terms of Instagram posting, being able to ask, questions and granular questions. Hey, what are the best topics, the top 10 trending topics that are getting views? How can I create a script with the talking head to kind of, get my views up? All that kind of stuff. So, we've taken away those excuses, and I think, obviously you have to get started at some point. So, have you been using any of the AE tools in terms of social media broadcasting in your business at all?
I've tested some out a bit. So like some of those ones you might see where it's like, comment this word to get a link in your DMs. I've tested some of those things out, and that's actually really helpful, because what happens is you create a call to action in your message or your video or your post, and the call to action says, hey, message this on the comment or comment this, and I'll send it to you. That's actually automated. You don't have to do anything. It's on its own. But when you are able to get comments on a post, the post algorithm goes way up, meaning more people will see that post, right? So you're kind of tricking it and using AI to kind of be the conversation. You can already, with Instagram, have there's paid tiers. You can actually have like away messages. You can have responses to common questions. And if you're not doing that now, you should, right? So someone says like, hi, do you do embroidery? You can have it automatically respond saying, yes, we offer embroidery. Current turn time is 10 business days. Would you like a quote? Click here, right? So there's lots of things you can already do with built-in tools within Instagram. And there's a lot more from there that you can kind of also kind of strap onto it that can do more as well with, again, APIs. I love what you mentioned there, Craig, too, about like taking away the excuses, right? That's where now is the best time. I am not an SEO expert. I am not a developer or a coding expert. I'm not a designing expert, right? But like I can scratch the surface, just the surface on all those things. And when I add AI to the equation, that's where I can become annoyingly efficient at some of these things, right? So a really good one, I'm glad you brought up the SEO and Google reviews. Easy thing to do is literally, like you said, ask one of these AIs how to improve your SEO. And it'll give you a lot of ideas. One of the easiest ones that I'll tell you right now, folks, is pick a niche, pick something that you like. Is it screen printing? Is it embroidery? Is it a certain type? Do you like doing embroidery for breweries? Cool. Go ahead and go to Google and search top embroidery for breweries and see what blogs pop up, right? Go take that blog, take the hyperlink, take the whole blog, go to ChatGPT or one of the other ones and give it to it and ask why it ranked so high in SEO. It'll actually scrub it, and it'll tell you why it did so well, why it was one of the top SEO responses, search engine optimized responses, right? You can then say, okay, I want to rewrite it, but better for SEO. And then you can kind of put your own personal touch onto it and say, okay, add this chunk about my business, who I am, and rewrite that with better SEO. And it'll actually, and you can now take that and you can post that blog. And when you post that blog, you should also be asking AI, how do I optimize more of this? It'll help with images. It'll help with creating tags for images, creating every image that you click onto on a website. It should have a description of that image, right? That is going to be for hearing impaired or visual impaired to be able to click on it and be told what the image is. And how that portrays in the back end of that image is also very heavy-handed with your SEO, right? So all these different categories, tags, alt image text, all those things people forget about. There's like, okay, add image, here's some blurbs. Man, no one's looking at the blog. Well, you didn't do it right, right? And don't forget, blogs oftentimes, yes, they're for your customers to read, hopefully, right? But it's also a cheat sheet just to get better SEO, right? It doesn't necessarily matter so much if only 4 people did something because of that blog, as long as the search engine sees you're continuously adding in good SEO content. You'll start working your rankings up in search engines. And although you might not see an immediate response off of a blog post, you're slowly boiling up to get better traction with your business SEO. And you don't need to be an expert. I am not. You need to be able to be wise enough to know that you don't know the answer and ask AI for help. That's step 1. Understand that you don't know and ask it for help. That's it.
You know, it's interesting. Now, I do a lot of asking ChatGPT or Claude for the right prompts to accomplish what I'm looking for and have it give me the prompts, which has been really helpful. And I always utilize a role. I always say from the role of A before I ask for a prompt. That's been really helpful in kind of getting, and I'll say there, I did a little trip. It says, keep it brief or no yapping if you really want to shorten it. It's a pretty good job. But yeah, to tell you, like AI impacted what we're doing right here. I gave ChatGPT the general scope of what we wanted to teach on. It produced the course description. I gave it over to our copywriter, Mike, and he massaged it up, made it look awesome. But huge head start for him. The questions that we are asking right now, I used AI, gave it some general scope of what I was interested in asking. It formed the questions for me, went back and edited them. And then when we're all done, I'm going to utilize the transcript from this to kind of summarize the meeting into some training materials. And then I'm also going to have it write, ChatGPT write a YouTube SEO optimized description for the video we're going to post. So that's how AI in my daily life right there. So implementation strategies, you know, one of the things that I've learned over the years, and you deal with this every day, is, man, you just got to get started. And so what are the best practices for implementing AI tools into your daily operations? And I know we talked about some common pitfalls that businesses avoid, and we all agreed on project creep, no perfect solution. You got to get started, and you can just do more so it's worth it. What's your thoughts, and explain what project creep is?
Oh yeah, I'm guilty of project creep, unfortunately, a lot. So with project creep, scope creep, it might be another term you've heard in the past, right? But it's where you kind of start something with one intent, and then all these fun little sparkly things start showing up. You're like, ooh, what's this? Ooh, what's this? Ooh, what's this? And you get enamored with all these other side things that now the project went from this to this because you got distracted by all the fun, shiny things. And I am distracted by all the fun, shiny things always, right? So not letting yourself get lost in that scope, unless you are like, I'm done with work, I'm just kind of having fun, then go down rabbit holes, enjoy, right? But if you're trying to really focus on what you're trying to solve, don't let yourself be distracted too easily by other things. Kind of help set focus for right now on the task at hand, just to not get too distracted. And this can happen in a lot of ways, right? I'll be working in ChatGPT asking for a graph. I'm like, I don't like how that graph looks. And I'll like start going into like graph design. And all of a sudden I'm like totally off in design. I'm like, wait a second, stop. That graph was fine. Move on to the next thing, right? Don't get distracted by like the little things that don't necessarily matter as much, right? You're trying to get more done. If it's going to be good enough for what your needs are, it's probably good enough. Take your human element out of it on some things, right? So don't get too lost in scope creep or project creep on what that can do. And it's a fun new world, so it's easy to do so, right? I think the biggest thing to how to get started is just, I think you might agree, Craig, I think right now the easiest one to jump into is ChatGPT, just because everyone's heard that already, right? I would really say everyone who's listening or watching this later, just go to chatgpt.com. You don't got to pay for anything. Just create a free account and just test it out. See what happens, right? If you want to go to Screen Print GPT and go to that bot within ChatGPT and ask it screen printing questions, go for it. If you want to use the standard basic out of the box ChatGPT, it's fantastic. Just give it a go, right? I always, when I ran large scale production with my current shop or even my family, I have what I call a 2-minute rule. use your brain for 2 minutes because I'm busy using mine before you come ask me a question, right? And I think that ChatGPT is now the ultimate 2-minute rule, right? If you're ever finding that what you're doing is taking you more than 2 minutes to do, should it be? And can you go ask ChatGPT for a better way to do it? And if you can explain the variable, explain what you're doing, and ask us a better way to do it, it might make some pretty good suggestions to kind of help you figure out the next way to go, or the other path you're not looking at.
100%. And I'm very guilty of project creep. I've been accused of that many times, and I've worked on it, but I just can't help myself. So
same
progress. The other thing too that, I think we talk about this, Matt, is there's no perfect solution. There's not one AI app that's going to do everything for you. It's a collective. You have to find, maybe you're going to use Dolly or Midjourney for your graphics, or maybe you're going to use ChatGPT just to get the data, and you're going to have it formatted through Claude. You just have to find what works for you. Maybe at some point there'll be a singularity and we'll just have one thing. Maybe we'll have a chip and it'll handle everything for us. But you're never, I don't think you're ever going to find that one perfect tool. And it's evolving so rapidly. I've seen the differences in terms of a generation of copy generation between GPT 3.5 and 4. You've had 4 because you've been paying for it. Now it's rationed, so you get so many ChatGPT 4 responses, and then they say you're cut off, you're back to 3.5. But I think one of the challenges that we're all going to face is finding that balance between human touch. You alluded to this earlier, human touch and AI. What is that balance? And one of the best examples that you gave me, Matt, was using like Printavo API and GraphicsSource human capital. Expand on that idea a little bit. Explain to me what you meant by that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So GraphicsSource, fantastic company, partnership with Printavo, great people. I'm personal friends with them too, so I just love them all around. But they're just great. If people who are listening don't know who they are, just go check them out. GraphicsX with an X source.com. Fantastic company, great folks. So they've got, I think it's almost 600 artists now in Honduras. It's something massive. I've been to their facility in Bangkok. It's massive over there as well, doing all the embroidery on that side of the world. They've got really, really fantastic and Adobe certified and trained people working in a physical building in Honduras, so usually central time zone, right? And so you can just have a remote staffer that either can work for you full time, and you just are in Printavo and you change the status to need mockup. They're pinged, they do the mockup, and they put mockup complete. It pings you, and you're moving on to the next thing. Again, mitigating those micro tasks that bog down, right? Do you necessarily need your art department person making a rudimentary mockup, or do you want them working on the complex stuff to win the big client over, right? All about time spending and money spending to find that right spot. I'm also utilizing, this is actually public, so if you folks are listening, you can check this out too. GraphicsSource also offers an API, which is fantastic. So traditionally, you had to pay for a staffer, which for most of you listening, that's probably going to be worth it. It's a fantastic deal. My print shop, like I said, we're small but mighty. We don't necessarily need to have a full-timer or the resources right now for a full-timer. But I don't want to stop what I'm doing, go to GraphicsSource.com, log in, go through their process, upload those things. That takes 10 minutes, right? Well, now they actually offer a fantastic API plugin where they'll tell you, okay, you got to email them, they'll get you set up, you make a couple statuses, and I don't have to pay for a full-timer. I simply trigger a status, which then triggers their API, pulls my data, opens up a little window, puts it all in there, and it triggers them to do the work. They do the work, they bill my card on file for the work done, and they drop in the updates into my Printavo for me, and I'm notified. So I'm not paying for a full-timer, right? I'm only billed as if I was to go to their website. But they even found, yeah, you know what? We can make this better, right? There's got to be a better way. And they found it, right? Through the API with Printavo, and then being able to connect to the GraphicsSource team to get work done, right? It's fantastic. Now, you mentioned something really, really important. There's not a single solution for anybody. This is a hard concept, I think, for a lot of folks. I talk to a lot of people who are like, well, why can't this do that? It should be able to. Okay, I hear you. That's not how the world works sometimes, though, right? Stephen Farrar gave a great presentation about this at Print Hustlers last year. Tech stacks it's called a tech stack for a reason, folks. You might hear ERP is a fun new buzzword, right? ERP is an accumulation of systems to create the enterprise solution, right? There is no one singular software that's going to do everything for everybody. It's impossible, guys, right? However, you find the strong ones, and especially strong ones that have good APIs, and then you find other ones to patch in where there's deficits based off of your independent needs. Your shop's needs versus another shop needs might be unique and different. There's, of course, the broad strokes that, of course, we're going to make sure to take care of at InkTavo, right? There's certain nuances that maybe are unique to a small swatch of them. That's where you tech and stack your tech to create those solutions. So don't get lost trying to find the one answer. Find the closest answer and then start looking at how to utilize other technologies to stack them together. And if it comes down to anything I'm ever looking at price point wise, because we're talking about I spend $20 on ChatGPT. I spend $20 a month on Zapier. I spend $99 a month on automations.io, right? These things start to add up. If you just look at that number and go, oof, I got to cut something. It's the wrong way to look at it. I always look at it based on a time allocation. How much time am I saving for X amount of dollars? And if I can always quantify that to go, okay, well, what's your time value, right? How much does an hour of your working time truly cost? How much should you be making? How much do you want to be making per hour, right? And are the tasks that you're doing throughout your day helping lead up to that hourly, or are they pulling off of that hourly? And they're almost always pulling off, right? So don't just spend money to spend money, right? Unless you want to, and have fun. If you need help spending your money, I would love to spend it for you, right? But otherwise, find what slows you down and takes away from your hourly rate, and then automate that. So yeah, I do spend a couple $100 a month just on different little automation services, but I'm now 1.3xing myself. And the ROI, it's not even, I can't even imagine ever going otherwise, right? Same thing with looking at adding more automation to my Printavo account. If I can automate something, I'm not doing it. What's my time valued at, right? So look at what technologies are out there. Look at the one that is closest aligned to what your needs are, and then invest in it, right? And then spend time in it and try to find other technology to help with those time deficits that you're having throughout your day.
Yeah, I think one of the big challenges with technology, it's not like you can hold it in your hands, right? It's this esoteric thing. And you know, exactly what you said about looking at it, you know, what you're doing is you're buying back time, right? And then what you're able to do when you buy back time is reallocate it to more productive things. So I always look at your tech stack as just an employee. It's just an employee. I'm paying them a little different. And you know, if they're a Kansas City Chiefs fan and they happen to miss Monday after the Super Bowl, probably don't have to deal with that with my tech stack. But it's an employee.
I'm mediocre at lots of things, but with AI, I can become annoyingly good at more things, right? So find what you're good at and then start to utilize AI to help propel you to wherever it is you want to go.
Yeah, well, it's a perfect segue to what we're going to talk about next. And we could probably do a whole class on that. And that's the kind of the emerging trends. And we're obviously graphics, AI is playing a huge part in our industry and the industry as a whole in terms of generative AI models creating artwork for printers. So I don't see it in the phase that's going to, it still doesn't understand like what the market trends are, what's going to sell in a retail store. It's a great, if given the right prompts, you can really create some great dynamic artwork. And I use AI for if I need a ink. I just did this the other day. We have our inked avocado mascot, and which Matt, you don't have to speak as to your preferences. That we know how you feel about it. But our inked avocado mascot, I wanted to do one when we were in Philly, and so I said, "Hey, I need an inked avocado holding a pool cue, smoking a cigar, looking like Tony Soprano in a tracksuit." And bam, I got quite a few options, and it was quite impressive. I just didn't have the time to press it on a shirt. So we're starting to see that. And I know you use a variety of AI tools for graphics. What's your tech suite for graphics and AI?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Midjourney and DALL-E 3. DALL-E is part of ChatGPT. I use them both. The screen print GPT shirt that I'm wearing right now, AI created, right? Created it and then just made a DTF and pressed it, right? So rapid prototyping, rapid creation, definitely easier to do now than ever before. But like you said, I don't think it's quite there yet to replace even clip art of any sort, right? Because it does have a barrier to entry. You have to know how to talk to AI. You have to know how to prompt. We talked about this word prompt a couple times in this chat, right? Knowing how to ask the questions and how to get the right answers out of it. Inside of ScreenPrint GPT, it does have a built-in prompt maker. So you can ask it to create a prompt and give it what you can. It'll actually create a better prompt for you. So you can go ahead and go to any of these art creation ones and ask it. But be aware, when you're able to ask it once for that inked avocado and have it pop out the perfect soprano one, that's not usually the case. What tends to happen is you're going to have a few iterations. And you might be like, oh, I like that one. Change the track color, shoot to red. And that's not going to happen. It's going to change the whole image still, right? So it's still an emerging use case. But I do think, like every part of AI, there's people who are going to fight it and people who are going to adopt to it. And I promise you, in all parts, the ones who adopt to it will surpass those who fight it. It's just a matter of time, right? So if you are an artist and you're already feeling a little bit uncomfortable with AI, that's okay. I don't want you to change your ethos, right? However, not using it is not the answer. Test it out. Work with what you have. If you're already talented at anything and you use AI on top of your talents, you're going to be unleashed to the world at a higher level, right? But if you don't try it, people who are not good at anything that get used to how to use AI, they will surpass you, right? In all parts, not just the art side, right? So you got to just jump in there. But more directly to your question, Midjourney has kind of been one of the go-tos for a long time. I find it a lot of fun. You can go to Midjourney too. It's you can watch other people's creations, right? Which is a lot of fun. You can actually go and see what other people are creating and see their prompts. I could sit back with a bucket of popcorn and just watch Midjourney creations all day, seeing what they're typing, seeing the responses, seeing how they're asking, seeing the responses. And it gets really wild. You start seeing like photorealistic, and they're calling out the type of camera, the type of lens, what they want the reaction to be, because they're really in the trenches of knowing how to ask the questions. So I like to kind of just like watch all those and kind of learn. But again, it all comes down to figuring out how to prompt. So start watching YouTube videos, stop watching our content, and you'll start to see more ways to test out things like art generation.
Well, thanks, Matt. We've gotten through all the questions. Special shout out to the folks at Rock US for helping us to promote this webcast series. We couldn't do it without you. Thank you so much for promoting it and always being there. Matt, thank you so much for coming on. I learned a ton. Any parting words of advice on AI before we sign off?
The only thing I can say is it's okay to be scared. It's okay not to know. What's not okay is being incapable of making a small change, right? You got to make a small change. Baby steps, right? One of my favorite movies of all time. What about Bob? Baby steps, right? Take that baby step. Finish listening to this. Just go to ChatGPT, ask it a question. Start getting accustomed to it. Start playing with it. You don't need to be an expert tomorrow, but you can't wait until it's too late. Baby steps.
Well, thank you so much, and we'll let you know the next time we roll out a new webinar with Rock US. Thank you again.